Welcome to this week's Rider Support.
This week we're going to talk about the correct use of lactate monitors, how you can make some easy gains with these visualization tricks. But first, Ineos have made a huge mistake, and we want to start out by talking about it. Sarah.
Anthony, okay, let's jump into the first question. Hi Anthony, with Team INEOS having had such a rough 2024 season and now making all these big changes, what do you think went wrong for them? Was it a tactical issue, the riders, or maybe their focus was on the wrong type of races? And do you think these changes will be enough to get them back to the top, or are they missing something important?
Okay, so I know we were talking about this off air, the Rowe. Rowe, for anyone who doesn't know, he's been a stalwart in Ineos as a franchise, Sky before that, really well liked, the host of What's Occurring with Grant Thomas as well, so we're a big fan of that show. And it was really telling for me when Rowe decided to retire and move into being a director sportif and opted not to do it with Ineos, instead going over to AG Tour, to Catalan. That for me is hugely telling. And the interview with him, he spoke about organisational bloat as the main reason. And I'm friends with some of the guys in the inside as well, and they've talked about how it's changed in the past few years from when Dave B was head of things. He'd make a decision, it'd get done. Now there's department after department after department, because something that a lot of people don't know about Ineos is Ineos isn't the title sponsor of that team. Ineos is the owner of that team. So it's different that Lisa Bike is sponsoring a team. Ineos actually own it, and it's under their wider Ineos sports group, which includes the runners, the rowers, and all these things. So because of that, you have layers and layers of, from working in big pharma, like there's compliance after compliance after compliance. I think that's a huge problem, and that's what Rowe was kind of alluding to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in an interview that I read with him, he basically said that the biggest reason wasn't financial. That's why he didn't go. We would have expected him to stay with Ineos. It kind of feels like he bleeds Ineos at this stage. He's been with them since year dot. But he went on to say, I just didn't want my time wasted, and that was my biggest fear. It wasn't financial. It wasn't any negativity towards an individual or the team as a whole. I have a lot of time for them, but I was scared that I'd get lost in a big organisation. It's more than a cycling team now. It's part of a global business, and it's owned by Ineos, not sponsored by them. So exactly, just echoing what you said. But yeah, I mean, there's been trouble afoot in Ineos for a while now, and we've seen it really reflected in the performances, and it feels like the cohesiveness of the team together. I mean, we do have those fly on the wall documentaries that we saw from Netflix last year. I know that you and I were at an event this year in Ireland, and Steve Cummings was there, who was he director sportif?
Yeah, he's head of the performance, I think.
He wasn't invited to go to the Tour de France this year. There was some tensions between Pidcock and him, and
we don't know that,
but
the way the season transpired, it looks like Pidcock was a key character in the descent, getting left at home for Il Lombardia to finish out the season. But yeah, I think Cummins getting left at home for the Tour de France was really telling. You heard a lot of whispers, Hayter leaving the team at the end of the season, didn't speak massively fondly of what's going on there.
His interview again was very, very heart on his sleeve about how he wasn't happy with it and kind of really delighted to jump ship from Ineos. And Ineos would have been a team that people really would have fought tooth and nail to get on. Yeah, the number one team.
The only game in town. There was talk for quite a while that if Brailsford decided he wasn't ready to make transfers in the off season, the entire transfer market would stop, because they were all waiting to see what Brailsford and Team Sky would do. That was his power that he had on it. He's no longer wielding that power at all.
Well, I think, as you said, his focus seems to be somewhere else within the organisation. They do seem to have hired 30 new members of staff, and they've brought in a lot of new riders. I'm not sure what the number is. So
what are they missing?
What are they missing? Yeah.
They're missing a rider to win a race.
Yeah.
It's so obvious. Pidcock is their marquee rider. Pidcock, for me, is just a massive underperformer relative to his salary. Now, I don't want to say Pidcock isn't a good bike rider. Pidcock is a good bike rider, and he's especially an all-around good bike rider. He can ride cyclocross, he can ride mountain bike, he's Olympic mountain bike champion, world cyclocross champion. He can ride off-road, but if we're analysing him just on the road, he's not delivering. Pidcock was, Pro Cycling Stats, he was the 30th ranked rider in the UCI last year. So to give you an idea of the type of riders in front of him, they're not the biggest riders in the world. Van Eynfeldt, Mikel Landa, João Almeida, Diego Alisi, Richard Carapaz, Skelmose, Maxime Van Gils. Like, they're good bike riders, but they're not attracting a salary anywhere close to what Pidcock is doing. Pidcock has a top 3 salary in the world. So he is paid as well as Remco, Tajay, Jasper Philipsen, Jonas, Biniam Girmay, Mathieu van der Poel, Primoz Roglic. He's paid better than a chunk of those riders, and he's not delivering anywhere close to it. Now, in the YouTube comments below, everyone's going to come back and say, oh, he's won a classic. He has won a classic. Stevie Williams from Israel has also won a classic. So are we saying Stevie Williams should be getting, like, Pidcock's on a report at 4 million a year at the moment. So my hot take for Ineos, they got really unlucky. They had a generational talent, Egan Bernal. We thought he was going to win the next 10 Tour de France's. They got really unlucky, and it was admirable that they stuck by Bernal in his comeback, and they had a clause in his contract to reduce his salary, and they didn't. They stuck by and paid him 2.8 million per year, even when he's off. So that's admirable. But now if you're looking at the franchise and you're like, how do they get back from here? Grand Tours is only where it's at. You need to be winning Grand Tours if you're a franchise as big as Ineos. So you have Tour de France, Giro, Vuelta. How are they going to win those? With Poggi, Jonas, Remco. It's like, it's not happening at the moment unless you have one of those 3 riders. You're not going to get a homegrown talent like Arnsman, where they can bring him up and spend 4 or 5 years developing him. He's just not going to challenge those guys. My hot take on this is you needed to clear Pidcock off that salary. Like, they missed a chance to get rid of 4. It looked like there was dissent in the camp. He was left out of Lombardy. I was like, finally, Ineos are going to make a good decision. You clear 4 million off the wage bill. Maybe you clear Bernal with him. That's 6.8 million in annual savings, and you throw the kitchen sink at Remco.
And try and get him on board.
You're not getting Jonas, you're not getting Poggi. Like, what's Poggi on at the moment? 8.3 million, just signed the new deal. You're not getting him, you're not getting Jonas.
8.3 million, and then if it fall a 200 million get out of the contract,
he's not
like
it.
It's just
he's locked.
Yeah,
but
he's
Remco's
not
there.
Locked.
Remco's gettable for that sort of cash. And he relaunches the franchise, and he re-energizes the staff. He re-energizes all the amazing young talent they have coming up. But they're not going to challenge Poggi and Jonas.
I think at the moment what I would say is, because the way Ineos is run, and it is run like a business rather than a cycling team in the traditional sense, where there's loads of sponsors who have very little to do. It's more of a as Luke Rowe said, it's a corporation. I would say at this point they're going back to the drawing board. They're all sitting around the boardroom and they're thinking, okay, what's the plan for the next 4-5 years, the medium to long term?
It's
and
still got to be Remco.
Really, do you think so? There has to be some more talent coming that they can.
Think how
they
young
can
the
snap
lads
up.
are. Poggi, these lads, they're in their early 20s still. Like Poggi, Jonas, Remco. They're the only game in town.
Yeah. Are you sad to see the decline of Ineos, or are you kind of?
No, not really.
Fair enough. Okay, will we move on to the next question?
Transform your indoor cycling with Rouvy, the platform that brings real-world routes and augmented reality to your training. Whether you're preparing for a big event or you're just looking to explore, Rouvy lets you experience legendary rides like Alpe d'Huez and Passo de Stelvio from the comfort of your home. Rouvy's unique augmented reality technology uses real-life video and GPS data to create the most realistic cycling experience available. You'll feel every climb, descent and turn with precise terrain replication, giving you an authentic outdoor ride indoors. Plus, with AR elements like avatars and banners, the ride really feels totally immersive and interactive. With over 1,500 routes and 25,000 kilometres, the world's most iconic cycling destinations, Rouvy is perfect for cyclists of all levels. Whether you want to enjoy scenic routes, participate in group rides, or push your limits with advanced training plans, Rouvy has you covered. Rouvy also offers flexible pricing, allowing you to pause your subscription or choose duo or group plans to share the experience. From exploring new places to serious training, Rouvy has something for every cyclist. Ready to ride the world? Visit rouvy.com and start your journey today.
Hey Anthony and Sarah, I heard you have big plans for events and racing next year. I too am signed up for the Rift Gravel race in July. The thing that I do suffer from is my mental health, and I have issues such as anxiety. This year I'm trying to push myself out of my comfort zone. I've never brought my bike abroad or raced an event like this. Do you have any tips for mentally preparing for a big event like this so I can stay calm and actually enjoy the experience? Wow, thank you so much for writing in and being open about your mental health struggles. And I think on varying degrees, traveling and racing, or even racing in your own locality, can bring up a lot of kind of anxious feelings because there's a lot to think about and
A lot of uncertainty.
And then throw into that traveling to a completely new country, getting on a plane, packing up your bag, which is your bike, into a bag, which is potentially something you've never done, worrying about that, getting there, getting on the new roads. It can be quite daunting.
A simulation's massive. I talked about this on the podcast with Alex Howes and then Jeremy Powers as well. I'm not sure if the Jeremy Powers one has been released. A simulation is massive. Howes had his best ever World Championships result when it was in Richmond, USA, because he didn't have to travel. We don't put enough emphasis on how fatiguing mentally travel is, how being around different environments, different foods, different people, different accents. Michael de Lagrange from Amani Project really hit that home to me when he talked about he called them highly pressurized auditions the East Africans have when they come over to Belgium. So imagine lining up for a race in a climate you're not familiar with. You look around, nobody looks like you. Nobody speaks the same language as you. You don't recognize the food. You don't recognize the culture. And then you're judged on one performance. And that's essentially what we have for amateurs. It doesn't have the same consequences like the highly pressurized audition where it's, sink or swim in terms of
losing your job or your career. Yeah.
But it still means you can go to an event like this and really struggle to enjoy it or not go at all. Like I know someone that tried to go through the airport and then they just frozen by anxiety in the airport and had to turn home. So 2 things I would say on this that are really interesting. I had a friend who rode for Team Sky years ago, and the consequences of getting, Bradley Wiggins into the base of a climb in the Tour de France at a perfect moment. They trained an entire 12, if not 24 months for 2 or 3 moments inside the Tour de France. Tour de France is only decided by moments. It's decided by position into a climb. It's decided by performance on a climb, a time trial. So his responsibility was guiding them into the bottom of this climb. So how do you make sure you're switched on for that moment? Like it's a moment in 3 weeks inside a season. How can you hope that your motivation is good, that your legs are good? They worked hard with sports psychologists to figure it out, and they used the trick where you press your thumb and your forefinger together. So all through the season, when he was away at altitude camps, he'd make a connection between the sacrifice he was making away from his kids, his wife, press the thumb and the forefinger together. Later on in the season, where everyone's having dessert or beers and he's not, thumb and forefinger together. Time after time, he made that connection between thumb and forefinger. And then when it came time to perform, he's in the bunch, he's not feeling good, but it's go time. He pressed the thumb and forefinger and everything came rushing back to him of all the sacrifice he's made. It's for this moment. Wigo's got to be third wheel or second wheel or whatever it is into the base of it. So visualization really matters. And then I'd marry that with a conversation I had with a friend who's going to Mallorca this week and really anxious. And what massively helped him, he'd never been to Mallorca before. He'd never ridden on the wrong side of the road before. So what I advised to him is use Rouvy in preparation for it. So you can go and you can ride the routes. You can see what the corners look like. You can see what the runoff on the descents looks like. Because people are so scared of this, going what if I overshoot a descent? But when you ride it on Rouvy, you go, oh, actually, the descents are all barriered, or none of the descents look very dangerous.
Yeah, or there's a wall here, or the descent, or the skyline, or I'm going to see this across, on the horizon. Rouvy, actually, they have new routes that just opened up in Iceland, actually. So this...
You need to be doing that for real.
I should be doing this as well. That's a really good point. This listener should definitely go on to Rouvy and check out those routes, because that is just, it might seem very unimportant, but all of these tiny little steps that you can take to make yourself more familiar with the place and more comfortable, it's going to help big time.
We rode the lighthouse route when we were in Mallorca. It's fantastic if someone hasn't done it. You don't want to do it in the middle of the day because there's a lot of traffic, but Cap de Formentor, it's visually stunning. It's breathtaking. And I was telling him how amazing this was. And he was just building the anxiety up around how the cars were a problem and how I told him there was some rocks on some of the corners. And then he rode it on Rouvy and he's absolutely pumped. Now he's heading out this week. I've been chatting to him back and forth and he's feels like he has no nerves because he now knows what to expect.
You know, what to expect. That's a really good point. All of the big routes, all of the big climbs are on Rouvy as well. So wherever you're going in the world, you can go and check those out. I think another thing as well that would be really good for this listener is to try, if you can, to ride a little bit of the course first. Like, we're going out a few days beforehand. We're going to be on course and testing out, making sure our tire pressure is okay.
Preparation's the anecdote.
Preparation, yeah, and training. That's really it, isn't it? And of course, I will reach out to you when we're over there and come for a training ride with us and come and suss out some of the course, and you'll already have a couple of friends there. And the gravel scene is quite friendly as well. It's not.
It's a little bit different.
It's not road. It's not like road racing. So please try not to stress out too much. And look, I will be in touch. And very best of luck with your training. Okay, next question. Hey Anthony, I love the recent podcast on lactate threshold and all the details about LT1, LT2 and LT3. I don't know why you're getting the thank you for that. That was my podcast. I'm curious about something you mentioned, how lab testing is the most accurate way to measure LT. If a full lab test isn't possible, are there ways I can get fairly close with field testing? And for someone who's not racing at the pro level, how much should I actually be focusing on LT versus just getting in those endurance and intensity sessions? So last week I did a full podcast on what lactate threshold is, because we mention lactate threshold and then these like...
Do you want to link it up below?
I'll link it below. We mentioned on the podcast a few times what the LT inflection point is, your first inflection point, all of that kind of stuff. And I just said I'll do a full lactate threshold for dummies. So I will do that below. But can you get into the weeds of why a lab test is more important, or does field testing work at all in your opinion?
Because the Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, I love this story he had when he was talking about employees and what decisions they can make and what decisions they can't make. He said, if you can walk through a door and walk back through the door, if you don't like what you see when you get to the far side of the door, you should take those decisions all day long. So take a decision if it has consequences that are reversible. If you walk through a door and you get to the far side and you're like, that didn't work out too well, and you can't walk back through the door, it's locked behind you, it's undoable, you should take those decisions very slowly and very cautiously. So what I kind of took from that story is we have upstream and we have downstream consequences to decisions we make in sport. So an example of this upstream consequence is if we set our lactate threshold wrong, we have a lot of downstream consequences that flow from that decision. So now our training stress score for every session is wrong. Now our chronic training load performance management chart is wrong. Now we're making poor deductions about when we're rested, when we're recovered, when we're injured, when we're not. So it's a decision that we should put a lot of emphasis on. And speaking to the best coaches in the world, Dan Plews, Olaf Boo, Dan Lorang, they all talk about how easy it is to contaminate lactate test reading. So if you're not going to get it done from a professional, I say just don't do it and test the traditional way. Like we talk about, we've had loads of podcasts where we talk about how to set your lactate threshold heart rate or your lactate threshold power. That's a much better way to approach it, and you can replicate it again and again. So you can do a block of training. Like one of the ways I'll set up training for an athlete is a reverse periodization model, where we'll test sprint power at the beginning of a block, then we'll do a sprint block, and we'll retest sprint power at the end of the block. So you need to have a test that's repeatable at the start of the block and the end of the block to see if the threshold, like if the stimulus you're giving to the athlete is actually working. So I'd say no, stay away from lactate thresholds. And you see a lot of pro science Instagram dudes doing it, and it's like it's too many downstream negative consequences when you get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean the whole point of lactate threshold and doing testing is that it's super precise. That's what you're paying for when you're going to the lab, is this absolute precise moment of when that buildup of lactate becomes a problem, or when it starts building up faster than your body can clear it. So if you're doing a field test or using, I covered it again in the podcast, any of the wearables, that they actually use an algorithm based around the intensity and try and get your lactate threshold from that and the ramping up of intensity and your heart rate and your HRV. And again, they're just like wildly different every time you test with them. So there's a long way to go with that, I think, at the moment.
And you don't know what affects it is your problem. Like you don't know what you don't know. So what effect does a poor night's sleep have on your first inflection point? What effect does a slightly alkaline diet in the days into it have? It needs to be done in a controlled environment by a professional.
Yeah, so why bother if you're not going to do it correctly doing it at all? Use FTP or VO2 max to actually train with instead. Okay.
Roadman, I know how serious you take your goal setting, whether they're fitness or life-related goals. If you're looking for a powerful ally to support you on this journey, look no further than Huel. Huel has become my secret weapon for when I don't have time to prepare a balanced meal. It ensures I get the nutrition I need without sacrificing time or taste. Plus, it stops me from reaching for that takeaway menu. I always throw a bottle into my backpack when I'm heading into the city to work, and it stops me eating junk convenience foods, snacking on croissants and bars of chocolate, because I know they don't support my training goals. It's a handy, nutritious meal on the go, and it's got over 22 grams of protein. Huel is perfect for athletes that don't have time to cook or prepare food before a training session. It's convenient, nutritious fuel at your fingertips, ensuring you hit your daily fueling needs for that session. Huel Ready to Drink has 26 essential vitamins and minerals in every single bottle. You're getting a whopping 175 health benefits. Plus, it's made from natural ingredients like tapioca, sunflower seed, coconut, and more. The best part, it's the flavours. There's 8 crazy, beautiful flavours. Iced coffee is what's in my backpack right at the moment. You can get Huel directly to your home. All you got to do is head on over to the Huel website, huel.com/Roadman.
Question number 4. Well, this doesn't seem like much of a question. It starts off with
It's a statement.
Public service announcement. Can all those bell ends with squeaking disc brakes please sort them out? And then there's numerous exclamation marks. It ruins everybody else's ride. Anthony, can you please give these morons some tips as to how to fix
It
this?
doesn't ruin everyone's ride. I don't know. I've never had a ride ruined by squeaking disc brakes. It's probably my brakes, that's why.
Probably. Yeah,
They're
maybe
a bit
it is.
annoying, but
a little bit annoying.
Come on.
I think it's more.
How bad's your day going?
I think it's a bit more embarrassing. I put my gravel bike together a few weeks ago, and when I went out, I hadn't used it in a while. When I went out, it was squeaking every time I pulled the brakes. I was a little bit more mortified. I'm not sure it was bothering anybody else. You do on sportifs or mass participation. It is like a load of whales. It's like that whale music coming towards you. It can get a little bit much because it's super, super loud. What you don't do, by the way, another public service announcement, is put oil on them. I have heard of people doing that.
Who cheered and that was like you?
No, not me. But that
confession, I did do that.
Did you?
I borrowed a mountain bike years ago in Toronto. I think one of the first times I ever went mountain biking, and the shop just gave me a lend of it. And it was a really nice demo bike they had. And I was super cautious to give it back to them clean.
Perfect.
So I spent hours obsessing to get this back cleaner than they gave it to me. And I cleaned down the bike with not oil, but some sort of solvent.
Oil-based, yeah.
It was like a muck off solvent or something, and just absolutely ruined. So,
wrecked.
okay, so to remove the squeak, you got to wipe down the rotors with an alcohol-based rub to remove any dirt, grease, contaminants.
For people who don't know what the rotors are, by the way, that's the flat metal disc, because I wouldn't have known which part the rotor was.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, they are super sensitive to contaminants. So even if you're using a rag that you've used with Mr. Sheen for cleaning your table, and then you put the alcohol on it, that's going to contaminate it, and it's going to totally ruin them.
Even oil on your fingers. You have to have your hands completely clean, absolutely no oil whatsoever near the rotors.
And the brake pads.
And the brake pads,
brake pads, you need to check them for wear as well. This could be another issue. If they're significantly worn down, or if they have oil or contaminants on them, they need to be replaced. And even a small amount of oil or dirt can totally ruin the pads and give you that squeaking sound. Misaligned pads could also be giving you the squeak. You can sand down the pads, which is something I actually haven't done, but people have often said it to me. If the pads aren't too worn out, they're quite a new set of pads, you just get your new bike and it's starting to squeak, which we see a lot of time, and the pads look very shiny or glazed, slightly sanding them with a very fine grit sandpaper until they have more of a matte finish will help. Check rotor warp. This is something for almost a travel tip as well. You can be taking off your rotors when you're traveling, because a small bit of rotor warp, basically like a buckle in your rotor, that's going to give you also squeak. And then just basic things.
It's going to give you squeaking, but it's all you'll be able to hear that there's going to be rub. Yeah.
And just making sure everything is tight.
Yeah.
But I think contaminants is the main thing I think that gives that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just trying to be very, very careful, keep oil away, and just try and keep them clean. And I hope that public service announcement helped there. Okay. Hey, Anthony, I'm a roadie looking to dive into gravel riding, and I'm stuck on one big decision: carbon or aluminium for my first gravel bike frame. I know carbon is lighter, but I'm also thinking about durability and budget, since gravel riding can get rough. What's your take on the pros and cons of each for a gravel setup, and is one better for a roadie making the jump to gravel?
I would answer the question with a question.
Oh no.
What are you using it for?
My mum used to always do that with me.
What's he using it for? I don't think you can answer that too well without knowing what he's using it for. If you're just using it to go riding with your buddies for 2-3 hours on a Saturday, I think that's type A of bike. I don't know if it distinguishes like material, aluminium to carbon, but it's just different stuff you'd want to look out for. Or are you going, like, I'd say you're looking nothing too flashy or no extra requirements that I can think of if you're doing that from a standard gravel bike. But if you're going longer races like Unbound, now you want to start thinking about, well, does this bike have a place to put 3, maybe 4 bottle cages if you don't want to carry a hydration pack on the back? Or you do multi-day events like Badlands, so do you have the ability to mount stuff on your forks, or are you going to use something like a tail fin rear, which is going to be compatible with everything? But mounting then becomes an issue, where if you're looking to do multi-day stuff, because you're going to want to put luggage on it, same for bike packing, you're going to want to put luggage on it. I would say if I was buying a gravel bike now, I wouldn't distinguish between aluminium and gravel.
And carbon.
I would look for carbon. I would look at clearance, tire clearance. It's going bigger and bigger and bigger. Alex Howes was talking about 55 tires. So people are now using, Dylan Johnson's using 1.2 mountain bike wheels, which are bigger again. So I would go clearance would be my main
That's your first consideration
for
if you're jumping from road into gravel.
If I'm on a budget, like regardless of if I'm on a budget, if I'm going carbon or aluminium, clearance is the first thing I'm looking for now. If that's the choice and I'm on a budget, I'm probably just shopping secondhand if I'm on a budget, because there's a lot of value at secondhand. And I'm looking for things that are making my life easier based off like what I want to do with that bike.
Reading into this, and as someone who was new-ish to gravel bike and riding bikes at all, I think his fear here is the carbon, is it going to get damaged? Because we know how rough and kind of how technical gravel riding can be. So what I'm getting from this is that he's maybe a little bit nervous that if he goes carbon, yes, it's lighter, but it's not going to be as sturdy.
No, I think it's fine.
You think it's fine?
Carbon's super strong.
Yeah,
it's fine. I wouldn't have a worry about it. Yeah, if he's looking for a bit more value, I'm not sure if it's there in the second-hand market in aluminium. There's just more carbon bikes. So I would think you just go second-hand carbon.
I would go carbon, because I think it's like, if you buy your first road bike, you spend €1,000 on it, and within 6 months you're looking for an upgrade and you're not happy with it, and you're eyeing up your mate's lovely carbon gravel bike, and it feels like the previous 6 months and that €1,000 or whatever is just like bad money. So I think my advice as the non-voice of reason is go carbon. Always go carbon.
Go cheaper secondhand and spend the extra cash on having a couple of sets of tires.
Yeah. Okay.
We are so excited to announce that we are partnering with Whoop. Whoop are changing the game when it comes to wearable technology and health monitoring. Whoop is a wearable health and fitness coach that provides you with feedback and actionable insights into your sleep, your recovery, your training, your stress, and your overall health. Sarah and I have been using Whoop for years, and we love the insights it provides into our body's inner workings. It really gives us a look under the hood. And you're going to see Mathieu van der Poel, Richard Carapaz, and other elite level cyclists wearing Whoop, but it isn't just for those superstars. All the data is personalised to your unique physiology and fitness levels. If you're interested in taking control of your health and your fitness so that you can excel in all aspects of your life, you have to go and check out Whoop. Go to the URL now, which is join.whoop.com www.whoop.com/roadman. I'm going to pop that in the description below, and you're going to get a free month's access to Whoop membership on me. I promise you won't regret it.
Okay, last question. Hi Anthony, I've been gravel riding for a while and I'm curious about tyre inserts. I see some pros using them to prevent pinch flats and improve ride feel, but they add weight and seem like overkill for non-competitive riders. Are they worth it for long endurance rides or multi-day gravel events, or should I stick with tubeless only? And if I go for inserts, any advice on setup?
You know what I'm going to say here? Go wider on your tyres.
Go wider on your tyres. That's it.
Yeah, like.
But what if he doesn't have clearance?
If he doesn't have clearance, get a new bike. Go wider on your tyres is going to solve a lot of problems if you can. Max out your tyres. Like, get them to. No, I'm going to retract. I'm going to walk that statement back from maxing out your tyres, because you can, like, if you have clearance for a 47, like I just about have clearance for a 47. I'm using Specialized Pathfinder 47s on my Factor. Just about have clearance for them, but on certain events, Iceland, they're going to be fine because I know it's not really a mucky event. But if I was going to do one in Ireland, Lakeland Gravel Grinder, I know it's, or Unbound, I know they're going to be mucky events, and I haven't got clearance for the mud between the frame and the tyre, so I'm walking that back. But if you have the ability to go with wider tyres, that's going to stop more punctures than putting inserts in. If you aren't super, I just don't see it as a downside of riding inserts. Like, there's not very much extra weight.
It's saying here they add weight, but surely they're only a couple of grams.
A couple of grams, yeah. It's a rotating weight, which kind of would get into my head a little bit. But
right.
No, I would say...
Like a psychological thing, you'd be thinking, this feels
it's like
sluggish.
A heavy pedal or something.
A heavy pedal?
Yeah, anything that's like rotating around every...
Right, okay.
thing, like heavy shoes, heavy pedals, something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Crack me. But I would say inserts, good idea, but like you can do more basic things than that. Like we talked about going as wide as you can on the tyres, like topping up your sealant. So many people are riding dry sealant. Like making sure you're actually putting sealant in and your tyres are in good condition before you go, even for a ride at the weekend. You know, we were guilty of it a couple of weeks ago. We hadn't ridden gravel bikes in ages. We went out and then you ended up puncturing, and it was like a disaster getting home. Because, you know,
double puncture.
Nothing is working when you've no sealant in there.
So I'm a little bit confused about the inserts. You put an insert into a tubeless tyre.
Yeah.
And you've got your insert in there, which is like a foam.
Yeah, and,
and then you've got all of your sealants sloshing around in there.
So if
as
the
well.
sealant doesn't catch the puncture, the foam kind of will expand a little bit. It's like a foam, like, do you know, things you go swimming with?
Oh, like a noodle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so it's like one of those that expands a little bit. It doesn't give you much pressure. Like, you're not going to race on it, but
it's just to roll to get to.
You can roll before you get home, or you could roll to an aid station, or like if you weren't super drilling it in corners or whatever, you might make it to the end of the race. But they're not really designed to get to the end of the race on. I think I don't know what PSI to give you, but it's, or PSI equivalent, but it's going to feel quite low.
Okay.
But yeah, no, they're not a bad idea. I haven't tried them myself, but I will try them. Roadman, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rider Support. If you enjoyed this conversation, there's another one up here. You're going to love it. And click down here and subscribe to the channel, because we have amazing upcoming guests over the next few weeks and months. Talk soon.